Welcome to today's episode. We're coming up to Valentine's Day, and so as I started last year as a tradition, I'm going to do something special for Valentine's Day every year. It's going to involve tea, but also something nice to have with tea. So what I'm doing here is I'm just slicing up a few cherries. Now today's recipe traditionally uses well, all sorts of stuff. It's from Bengal, and there's a variety of flavourings you can use, and I intended to use mango, but I went down to the market and found they didn't have any mangoes this morning. Recently had some floods in the mango growing areas, I guess, and they're in short supply. And I thought cherries. Cherries for a number of reasons. One is it's Mrs. Devotea's favourite fruit, I reckon. She loves the cherries. Secondly, it's got a great association with Valentine's Day, I think, being sort of a romantic fruit. I think it's a reasonable description of it. So I'm just slicing these up here. Now what we're doing today is a recipe called papadoi. It's a steamed yogurt dish. Papadoi means steamed yogurt, and it is from Bengal in India, and then we'll do an appropriate tea to go with it, and go from there. Now I reckon I've actually chopped enough of those, so we're going to leave that there. And the only other thing I'm going to do is grind a few cardamom pods. It's a very simple recipe, but fantastic. So let's take, well, that's quite a few, 7. Put them in there, grind it out. Obviously a bit louder. Now incidentally, you may be wondering about the apron. Was a gift from a much loved aunt, actually my wife's aunt, but the doctor is one of my own, and so hello Auntie Pat if you're watching. Alright, we've got some ground cardamom there. Yep. Give a little bit more. You can of course break open the pods and just put the seeds in. You find it grinds quicker. You don't end up with the sort of pod bits, but I like the pod bits. I think by the time you grind them up they add some colour and they add a different flavour. Alright, all looks good. So, start with the two main, virtually the only ingredients really that are essential. 200 grams of Greek style yogurt. Greek style yogurt tends to imply a thick, solidly set yogurt, and indeed this is. And there we go. Conveniently a 200 gram pack. Now I also need about 150 grams of condensed milk. This is a 400 gram tin, so I'd say probably there. I'll put that back down there where no doubt it'll drip. Right, now you need to blend this quite smoothly. Hand whisker will do it, they go together quite well. Right, now that's actually pretty well it to the dish. You more or less cook that, but obviously we want to add a bit of flavouring. I've got the cardamom over here. I've got a little bit of vanilla. So we might just put a couple of drops of vanilla. I do like vanilla, hence the buying it in these massive jars that last quite a long time. Don't be frightened of vanilla. So many people put a drop and chuck it in a bit. It has like almost like a brandy-like consistency to it if you, or aroma to it if you throw it in heavily enough. I'm just going to put some of this cardamom in. I'm probably, looking at the amount of mixture I've got, it's probably a bit too much, so I'll put just a really healthy pinch in there. There we go. So cardamom. And unbelievably, that's pretty close to everything. Now I like to mess around with all sorts of stuff, and one of the things that I'm not a big user of is food colouring. Now, thing with food colouring is I use it if I have to, but I'm not a big fan of it. And whenever I use it, I like to be a bit different. And once I made the decision to use food colouring, quite often I'll throw several food colourings in. I like marbled cakes and things like that. They've got the sort of artistic swirls and things through them. So what I'm actually going to do here though is a little bit different. I've got my mixture there. I'm going to put a little bit of the mixture into this bowl here. There we go, probably about half to be fair. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a couple of drops of this Pillar Box Red, which will actually give me a nice Valentine's Day pink. I nearly always use too much food colouring whenever I'm colouring anything. Made way too many brown dishes over the years. But nevertheless, this is coming up quite a delightful pink. So what I'm going to do, and I suspect I've got enough mixture for about 4 of these little things. They're very much a little sweetmeat. Absolutely gorgeous. That pink colour, by the way, I'm quite happy with. So what I'm going to get here is my heart-shaped muffin tray. Now this is a silicone one. You can use a metal one. You can use a muffin pan. You can use what you like. I like to use a bit of canola cooking spray. I think it tends to make these things behave themselves. Now I reckon, looking at the mixture, I'm probably not going to have enough to make 6 nicely sized ones. I'll probably make 4, but I'll spray them all because if you've got any left over, you're obviously going to throw it in. So put that in this tray. Oh, by the way, in the tray I'm going to put some water because this is a steamed dish. Don't overdo the water. You want it to go about halfway up the muffin tin. So that's about right. So the first thing I'm going to do is put some of these bits of cherry in my moulds. Of course, the obvious reason for that is they'll then sit on the top and look delightful. At least that's the plan. Right, now take my bright pink mixture. Nice big spoonful of it into each of the moulds I'm using. Very pleased with this colour. I've used that same stuff before and ended up with sort of bright red or insipid pink, but this is a lovely, bold, Valentine colour. So there's the 4 I thought I'd get. Actually, probably enough 5. Delightful. And now I'm going to take the white that I saved and put some of that in on top, so when they're cooked they'll end up with a nice layering effect. I'll use my spoon here, which will probably add some pink smears in there. Run out of the white, so I think one of them might end up being all pink. So there we go. So that is just my little heart-shaped pappardelle moulds. Now they are going to go into the oven. It's going to go into a very low oven, about 140 degrees Celsius, and it's actually going to go for 30 or 40 minutes. So I'm going to pop these in the oven and then see you back here to make some tea. Okay, we're back and now we're going to get into some tea. Now let's talk about chai. Chai, masala chai, traditional Indian spiced tea. You've got to ask yourself what traditional means. This is a country that has over 40 languages. It has 2 very, very distinct cultures, north and south. It has 3 very strong religious cultures. It's just an enormously varied country. So Kashmiri chai to some people is green tea with almonds, to other people it's black tea with cloves. It's a just a massive contradictions. Korma is a great example. Korma is a dish that most people in the West believe is a very mild curry. A Kashmiri korma has generally got more chilies than you know what to do with. So it is really just a country with such variation, so it's very hard to pin down what a chai is. Now, because I've got a Bengali recipe, I thought I'd go with a Bengal style chai, and even that, there's some debate. Every household in Bengal has its own version, so here's what I'm going to do. And I also wanted something that's a bit Valentine-y, so sweet. So here we've got my Turkish ibrick, which is a favoured cooking device. I'm just going to put some boiling water in that just to speed the process. And what we're going to do is we're going to put that on the little hot pot there. And first thing I'm going to throw in, I reckon, is all the rest of that cardamom that I ground for the papadoy. Right, get rid of that. Now, cardamom is essential in chai. There's very few chais that don't have cardamom. Now, cinnamon is pretty essential too. Now, normally I'd use a stick cinnamon or sort of cinnamon chips, but I'm just going to use quite a bit of powdered today because I'm quite willing to have that cinnamon come through. Little bits of cinnamon I don't think are ever a really bad addition to any sweet dish. So that's cooking up there. Now let's look at the other spices I need. Now I nearly always put black pepper in my chai. I'm not going to do that today. Black pepper adds a lot of complexity to chai. It's a wonderful spice, but this is a dessert chai really. It's going with the papadoy, which is properly seen as a dessert, though I'll be serving it as more of an afternoon tea. But I'm going to add something a little bit unusual. I'm going to add a couple of strands of saffron. Saffron has a great affinity with milk, and I think it does add a richness. I'm actually going to drop them in the water there. And they will dissolve. You won't see them. There's about 6 or 7 strands. You won't see them at all, but you'll definitely taste it. Now the other thing is cloves. Cloves are a really tricky spice to use because they're incredibly powerful, can overpower a dish. I find that if you use whole cloves it's a bit unpredictable. So for some occasions I will use whole cloves, but what I prefer to do is get a little bag of ground spice, put it in my hand and then sort of work out, you know, what feels right. But you really don't want to overdo the cloves. I've probably got it about right today. So that's basically our spices, and what we're doing is that's already boiling, they're bubbling up there. Now the next thing that I want to do is add a bit of ginger, and I'm actually going to use some fresh ginger. I've actually got some here, and I'm just going to break it up a bit. Really just rip it into a couple of bits, roughly torn. It's not going to end up in the final teacup. I can feel the juice sort of running out of that as I do that. Alright, so there we go. Now that is absolutely bubbling away. I might turn that down a little bit. But I'm getting that amazing aroma, and something about the saffron brings the whole thing together. I think makes the whole thing very, very complete. You're not smelling 5 or 6 different spices, you're smelling a wonderful rounded thing there. So now the tea I'm going to use today is this. This is my premium English breakfast. I've been asked to create a range of teas, as some of you may know, and that's going to come to the market shortly. And meanwhile, right here at this table, I've sat around with Mrs. Devotea and we've blended and we've drunk a lot of tea and talked back and forwards, and I wanted to make a really, really good traditional English breakfast tea. And my traditional English breakfast tea has some tea from China and some tea from Ceylon and some tea from Assam. And if you think about where Bengal is, it's right up, well, I mean, Bengal itself was split in two, one half becoming the country of Bangladesh, one half becoming the province of West Bengal, which despite being called West Bengal was actually the most easterly of all the Indian provinces. So Bengal itself is very much a melting place. A lot of the opium and tea trade between China and India was conducted out of Bengal. So I felt that a traditional English breakfast, now very traditional. These days there's a lot of Kenyan tea put in English breakfast tea. That's generally because it's cheap. It's grown at a much higher elevation often, and it's just not the same. So much as I like Kenyan tea in its place isn't, as far as I'm concerned, in an English breakfast tea. Neither is anything that you're ever going to find in a tea bag worthy of the name English breakfast tea. And generally speaking, they are made with a lot of Kenyan and Malawi and just teas from places where they can be grown cheaper. So that spice mix has been going for 3 or 4 minutes. I'm now going to throw the tea in. There we go. It's about 4 or 5 grams of the tea. It is a strong black tea. So I'm going to give that about 2 minutes. And meanwhile, we're going to talk about this. This is the condensed milk I didn't use in the Bapadoi. Condensed milk is very, very popular in India. It's often used to make coffee, it's often used to make sweets, and it's often used in making chai. Now there really is 2 ways of making milk chai. One is to put your milk and sugar in one pan and cook it. One is to use condensed milk. And I tend to be in the former. I tend to use palm sugar, jaggery, and cook it with milk and reduce the milk, which I guess is a slower, but to my mind a really involved way of making it. I like to be involved in a process. I'm not a big fan of opening a can of something, but condensed milk has its place, and certainly when I'm out and about I often have little bits of condensed milk on me in an effort to make tea for Mrs. Devotea, who takes milk in pretty well all teas except green teas. So that's pretty well brewed. So what I'm actually doing is I'm going to grab this pot here temporarily. What we're going to do is we're going to swish the spices around and pour it into that pot. Now that's for one reason only, and that is to strain the spices out. Incidentally, this needs to be clean because if you've got bits and pieces of spices in there, they're going to go through. But I seem to have done a remarkably good job of pouring it all in there. Okay, so let's put back into our ibrick a bunch of condensed milk. I think we're going to go with most of it, and the reason I'm going with most of it is because those last little bits always take forever to get out. So there we go, put that on there, and it's impossible to use condensed milk without spilling it on your fingers, which then compels you to lick it off, which is hardly a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that tea back into the condensed milk. So it's a very strong tea, as you can appreciate. It was only, as you might have seen, about half a pot's worth of water, a bit less even, but it was certainly a good pot's worth of tea. So what we're going to do is we're just going to warm that through, and oh dear, I haven't got a spoon. Now one of the things that you find when Indian people are making chai is often they won't use a spoon to stir it. What they'll do is they'll pour it back and forth between 2 vessels. So given that I've got my teapot here handy and my ibrick, and they both have a handle, let's try that method. So pour it there. Now this is called stretching the milk often in India, and the reason it's called stretching the milk is because often they do it from a great height, and they do it with cups. They don't have a spout. These guys are very, very talented. But you see that? We've still got some condensed milk coming out there. But as I pour it time and time again, you'll find that the actual liquid itself is taking on a thicker consistency, and the sort of pure condensed milk sludge left in the bottom each time is getting to be less and less. So I think that's probably done. Should we try the high pour? I have terrible fears of this ending up all over me, but there we go. It's also adding a bit of froth to it, which is nice. So let's put it on there. Also just use a little bit of this water to warm my serving teapot here. Now I actually had an email about the whereabouts of Cyril, the teapot that featured in last year's Valentine's Day special. Sadly, Cyril was the victim of a tea-related accident. So no more Cyril, I'm afraid. But instead we'll use this delightful Indian teapot that I got for Christmas. So there we go. That is just about hot enough. We're just going to give that another minute. I'm going to turn it back up. Incidentally, you can certainly re-steep that tea and spice mix, and because it hasn't had any milk on it, you can restep it as a black. I'll probably do that because while I love milky chai as a food, when I'm drinking chai as a tea, I drink it black. So, here we go. Lovely warm chai. Pour it into the pot. And probably put it on a silver tray. Seems a reasonable idea. And we'll go and get the bapa doi out of the oven, cool it off a little, serve it, and we're ready to go. I've just realised, as you all have, that means this tea will probably be cold by then. I have to drink this now and make another batch. See you soon. Welcome back. My bapa doi here has been cooked. It was about 35 minutes in the oven. Then it was taken out, let it get to room temperature, popped in the fridge and chilled. An hour or so later, it's pretty well ready to go now. Doesn't always work, but we're going to turn these moulds out en masse. For that I just use a sheet of sort of this rigid plastic cutting boardy thing. Put it on there. Put my hand underneath it first. And turn it over. And what you hope is that by gently pressing on each of these, they fall out. And indeed, at least some of them have. Okay, so here we go. So there's the little beasts, and what we're going to do is we're going to grab one of them here, put it on its plate, and they're quite firm. And what I'm going to do is I've just gone and got one of these. This is a rose from Mrs. Devotea's rose garden. This is called Seduction. It's a beautiful white rose with pink edges, which goes just perfectly with our bapa doi. And I'm going to do nothing more and put it on the tray with the chai, and there we go, Valentine's Day. And I'll see you all next year for another Valentine's surprise, and I'll see you all very shortly for something else related to tea. Cheers.